In this lesson, we're going to find the area of a triangle. So we're finding the area of a triangle in this lesson because in order to find the area of a triangle, you have to multiply by a fraction. So we're taking 1/2 of base times height. So base is really any side of our figure that you want. But here's a really important thing. The value of h, which of course is the height of the figure, is the distance from that base, whichever base we pick, to the opposite vertex, which the opposite vertex just means the opposite point, the point on the opposite corner, and it must be perpendicular to the height. So a couple of things here. First of all, you can see this is the exact same triangle 3 times. And on the first time, I've written the base as the bottom, which is pretty standard. And this little square in the corner, if you've never seen that before, that means it's a 90-degree angle or a right angle. And of course, that means that it is perpendicular. So perpendicular means it's at a 90-degree angle. So the base could be the bottom of the fraction, or sorry, the bottom of the triangle. And the height could be obviously this distance because those two make a 90-degree angle. I could also have switched these backwards. I'll get to that middle example in a moment. If I switch them, I could have the base as the left side of my triangle and the height as the bottom of my triangle, because again, those make a 90-degree angle. For my middle example, however, notice that I've chosen the longer side as my base. And in order to have a base that has a height, I couldn't use another side of my triangle, and so I drew in a little dotted line, and that dotted line is at a 90-degree angle. This typically is called an altitude, and it is something that we could draw in that would give us the height of our figure. So notice that this would be the height or altitude. You might also see a picture written like this, where the base is whichever side of the triangle, and we have to continue that line outward in order to find something that would make a 90-degree angle with the opposite vertex, the opposite corner. So just so you know that I would still use the base, the distance from here to here, but then I would have to know the distance of the height, even though that's not part of the figure. So let's do a couple of examples. Remember that the formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. So for my first example, I'm going to take 1/2 times my base. I'm going to call this my base. And I'm going to call this my height because notice those make a 90-degree angle. So 1/2 times 5 times 4. Now what we know about multiplication is you can multiply in whichever order you would like. It might be easier to go ahead and multiply 5 times 4, and 5 times 4 is 20, and I'm going to call that 20 over 1. Now why would I do that? Because I know I have to multiply by my fraction, and now I'm going to reduce. So I know that 2 goes into 2 one time and goes into 20 10 times, and so my area is 10, and in this case this is inches, and so my answer is square inches. So what that means is if I were splitting this up into actual squares of inches, that I would end up with a total of 10 of those if I added all of the little squares up. Same thing's going to happen on my second example. It's 1/2 times my base of 8 times my height of 3. Again, it doesn't matter the order you choose to multiply these in. If I wanted to take 1/2 times 8 first, I could, or I could go ahead and, like my last example, take 8 times 3, which is 24, and write it as 24 over 1. And then I'm going to choose to reduce. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 24 divided by 2 is 12, and so my answer is 12, and this is meters, and so it's square meters. So area is 2-dimensional, that's why we're taking 2 dimensions times each other, that makes it 2-dimensional. So my answer is 12 square meters. Here are 2 for you to try on your own, so press pause, find the area of both figures, make sure that you label, and then press play to see how you did. For my first, My area is going to be 1/2. I'm going to say my base is 6, my height is 2, because those two make a 90-degree angle. Again, I can choose to multiply the 6 times 2 first to get 12 over 1. And if I reduce, I would get 6 square inches. And for my second example, 1/2 times base times height. Again, I can choose the order in which I multiply. If I wanted to go ahead and take 1/2 times 12, remember 1/2 times 12 is just half of 12, so that's 6. 6 times 3 is 18. So when we're multiplying with fractions, you multiply by the top and you divide by the bottom. So I would get 18, and of course this is in feet, and so my answer would be 18 square feet.